Hey, this is Frank. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Do you ever feel like you have friends who sometimes just don't get each other? This is a podcast that I recorded with two of my friends, Jake and Noah. We find out the hard ways we struggle to communicate better and sometimes succeed, but sometimes not. For years, the three of us have talked about communication and how it's sometimes easier said than done. Even when we're trying to be understanding, our well-meaning intentions often get lost in translation. We decided to share these conversations with the world. Join us as we find out what happens when three friends try to learn how to really talk to each other.
Yeah. We're just warming up. I'm not quite to sizzling level yet, but boy, oh boy, are we on the way.
Yeah, you're really low energy today.
Yeah.
Is he?
I feel like it. Normally he's like, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Where's your giggities?
Giggity.
Oh, I can bring him out if you want.
I believe you. Go ahead.
Well, just ask him how he's doing. He'll get it. How
that's
are you
true.
doing, Jake?
What's wrong, Jake?
The best I've ever been.
Yeah, that's my favorite question. I don't know. Did anything eventful happen this week?
Not for me.
Man, that does produce the response, though. If you just ask him what's wrong, he gets really good all of a sudden. He's like, I know. I'm doing so great.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Do you want to talk about that?
I honestly don't know when to believe you and when not to believe you.
Oh.
And I mean this sincerely.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. But I also think the caricature of the seven is hilarious. It's comical.
Yeah.
But sometimes, because like, I'm sure there are times that you're great.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there are times that you say you're great when you're not great.
Yeah.
And I don't know which is true.
Yeah. It's
but
one
you
of the
very rarely in the time I've known you have gone, I'm not doing that great, man.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I think that the more aware and like familiar with my own emotional state I've become, the more that sort of like, I'm not upset with you. Like that is an accurate representation of how you feel. But the more that sort of idea hurts me, like to know, oh, my friends don't even know when I'm actually good and when I'm actually not. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is now, it's incumbent upon me to be honest, not only internally, but also externally, if I want the people around me to know me.
Well, you know what's interesting? This, I was thinking about this concept this week because, so my dad passed away this week. And and we knew it was coming. I mean, when I found out that he had passed, I was at Goshen standing in front of the counter trying to get a refill. Mm-hmm. And I'm on the phone with my mom and she's like hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, everything's going to be okay. Can I get one? But I thought about this whole concept of like what's going on inside versus what's showing on the outside. And I was like, I was very calm just then.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody asked me, how are you doing? I actually had this thought. Like if somebody asked me right now, how are you doing? I don't know what I would respond. But I think it would be like, do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Because I also really I don't like that my dad died, but I really like making people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the idea of somebody asking me in that moment, how you doing? And going, well, my mom's telling me my dad just died.
I know. I
really like that, making people uncomfortable in that way. So I had that thought in that moment because I was just like, I'm staying real calm. It was packed.
I mean, how often do you get this opportunity?
Yeah.
Like,
this is a packed coffee shop. I was literally at the counter handing a mug to Madeline.
Yeah.
And my mom was like screaming in my ear. She might have heard my mom.
Shout out to Madeline.
And so I was like, can I get one to go, please?
Yeah.
But I do really, as an 8, I guess, I don't know if it has anything to do with my Enneagram or not, but my personality for sure, would rather be honest about it.
Yeah.
So I have many times in my life when somebody, like at a coffee shop or whatever, says, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
I've done that to a client. I've hopped on a call with a client and we're doing the small talk before we get started. And, client's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right, I guess. I mean, it's been kind of a rough week." People don't want to hear that, but I don't see the value in being like, "Oh, great. Everything's great."
Yeah, I do. I wonder about this authentically because I used to hate small talk like that. I just was like, it's so stupid. And the more authentically I do it, the more I'm like, it does inform the conversation. If I get on a call and I'm like, "How are you?" and the other person says, "It's been a horrible day."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to probably, take it easy if there are hard topics we need to cover or something.
Sure.
Well, right. And I mean this from that perspective.
Yeah.
There's value in not faking it.
Right.
Because if I sort of disclaim it, "Hey, today's been a rough day."
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm horrible overall, but it's been a rough day today.
Right.
You might not want to hear that, but it also sort of helps you understand where I'm at.
Right.
Where my mind's at, I don't think you need to get into detail. I don't think you need to go, "This happened and then this happened and then this happened."
Sure.
But I don't think there's anything. I wouldn't be offended if somebody else, a client or somebody, was like, "Oh man, it's been a rough week," or it's been a terrible day, but I'm trying to make it better," or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be offended by that. But a lot of people, I think, just don't want to hear it. They do the pleasantries because they feel like they need to, and they don't want to hear, "Oh, I'm not doing that great."
Yeah. Yeah. There's a guy I meet with every 2 weeks. Well, it's a group of people, but there's one lead guy, and he is truly in what has to be one of the worst seasons of his career, just because of the amount of difficulty they're doing and the volume, this transition they're doing. But he has to get on the phone with me, and it's a horrible conversation. Everything's broken and there are problems everywhere. And we always do the small talk. And he's like, "Yeah, it's not good. I'm working way too much, but this is still the best job I've ever had."
But
it's funny.
Bringing it back to you,
Mm-hmm.
to the thing that it's easy to make fun of. And obviously we've joked about it. I know we've joked about it to the point that it's frustrated you or made you angry or whatever.
Sure.
But it's a very real thing that you have done over the course of the time we've known you.
No doubt.
And there was a certain point where, and I don't think anymore, but there was a certain point where it was almost true. Like if you were ecstatic about how great you are, we're like, Jake's probably struggling with something.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can understand now. Somebody could think that. It's weird. I think it symbolizes in the present, something different based on where you've been. And what I mean by that is I grew up and somewhere along the lines of growing up, I received some sort of messaging that said, "Hey, you have a responsibility to the people around you to never be a burden," or something. And so this idea of potentially saying, "Oh, I'm having a hard time," might give somebody the impression, "Oh, I need some consolation or something." And so, I just never gave that impression. At some point when you play that role enough times, you start to identify with it and you start to believe you're not having a hard time and you've completely dissociated from any of those negative emotions. So I think that by the time that I met you guys, I was fully identified with that role, and you've seen it sort of deconstruct, in some ways, which is weird on both parts. It's weird for the person that's watching it happen and not really knowing what that messaging actually symbolizes in real time. And it's weird for the person who's trying to be honest, and starting to see the differentiation between when they're actually feeling good and when they're just saying it. And it's a weird process. So like for me, it's there's always, if I'm at the counter and somebody says, how are you doing today? It's like this matrix of decisions. It's like, okay, well, I really am doing great, and I'll say so. Or I'm not doing so great, but they don't seem like they really want to know, so I'll just say it's fine. Or I'm not doing great and I want to mention it. Okay, am I just saying this for attention? Or am I saying this because it actually seems appropriate to do? It's like there's this whole list of what is the appropriate action here. Does it really matter in the end? No, but I am aware, I guess, of why I'm saying what I'm saying at any given point in time.
Sure.
And I think it would mean something different for me if I was like, well, my dad just died. I would probably be doing it for attention or something like that. Whereas somebody else could do it and, it would be like, well, I have a legitimate relationship with this person. They should know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think the reason that when I don't do it, it's sort of opposite. I'm doing it because I don't want the attention. I don't I know those people in Goshen fairly well. I'm in there a lot. We don't sit down and have long chats or something, but I know them well enough to say, my dad just died and I got to figure this out, whatever it is. And, but I don't want the people going, oh man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do for you or whatever? I don't want that.
Why?
That's,
you might get cookies. You like those cookies?
Yeah. I didn't need a cookie at that moment. I needed to not have to drive to Decatur for like the fifth time.
But a cookie might make it better a little.
Oh, it might. It might make the drive better.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Jake sent me a meme.
I'm sorry that your dad died.
Thanks.
I thought the funeral was
it said never
nice.
forgetting.
I saw.
Yeah.
I thought the funeral was nice.
He's a real dick.
It was a few hours late, unfortunately.
It would have. It could have been funnier.
Yeah.
So if it was a September 12th never forget meme, it would have been funnier.
Are there those?
If not,
they probably exist.
You could have made it, but you didn't spend the time to make it the most authentic joke you could have.
Here's the thing. So Noah and I had the conversation on September 11th, and he was like, maybe my dad's going to die today.
I had it right 15 minutes before you had it.
And so what I did was I went ahead and downloaded the meme so I was ready.
Oh, nice. Nice. I did not do that part.
And unfortunately, it was still locked and loaded in the chamber.
I see.
And so I just went ahead and fired it away at a given point in time. But I think it still had an effect. It just wasn't the effect.
I saw it. I don't know if I laughed at it.
Yeah.
But I kind of went, like it was like the acknowledgement nod.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Brandy saw it too.
I believe that.
Who did you get crap from?
No, it wasn't so much that I got crap. I had 3 different people mention it to me.
Frank.
That was a notable
Frank,
response.
Jessica, and Brandy.
Zach, actually.
Zach. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to Zach.
So, yeah.
Not Jessica?
No.
Who was the third?
Frank texted me and said, did Jake send you a September 11th or a never forget meme or something? I don't remember what he said. Did he send that to
as a response
to your dad dying?
Yeah. I mean, everybody else was using English words, and I just decided no words are appropriate here. Nothing's appropriate here.
I think comedy's okay even in tragic situations.
Yeah.
I think it's even helpful sometimes. I think it's also harmful sometimes.
It can be.
But I told my sisters and my mom, we were
that I sent that meme.
No, at the funeral. We were sitting in the front row at the funeral before it got started, and I told Jennifer, I was like, if Dad passed away on September 11th, I was going to tell everyone my dad died on 9/11. They laughed at it. I think my dad would have laughed at it too.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I really like the idea of having something in common with Pete Davidson.
Really? Is that like an aspiration of yours?
You can still say my dad
It'll
died.
never be the clothing. So.
I mean, don't speak too soon.
It's true.
You can still say your dad died after September 11th.
It could. A lot of people have done that.
Yeah. My dad died within 24 hours of September 11th.
Yeah. After September 11th.
You got to say 9/11.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to.
What's funnier? If you say 9/11.
Try it. Let me hear it.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also think that I have a similar response that you have to. We obviously deal with it differently, but I don't like grieving or dealing with things is very sort of like private and personal because I think I feel like I've got to be strong for my family or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I don't do that. Obviously I do. We all do. But in that moment that my mom is hysterical on the phone, I'm not the primary thing I'm worried about. At that moment, it's like, okay, my mom went home to shower. So she wasn't even there. Just my sister was there. And so my mom's like hysterical. I know she's driving back to the hospital. So I'm going, oh gosh, is my mom going to make it to the hospital?
Right.
I'm like, I've got to drive 2 hours back to Decatur. I've got to pack up all my stuff. I knew this was a possibility, but I had gotten up at 2 a.m. that morning and my mom was like, please don't rush back, rest, I don't want you to die on the way back. So I tried to sleep a little bit and then I woke up with a pounding headache. So I told my mom, hey, I'm going to go get some coffee. I'm going to try to eat something and then I'm going to drive back to Decatur. And then that's when it happened. So in that moment, my primary thoughts are, okay, mom's got to get to the hospital. Okay. I've got to get back to Decatur. I've got to get all my stuff packed up and get in the car. Is there anything, do I need to notify anybody? Is there anything I need to do in the meantime? Like these are the things I'm thinking about in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different response than some people have. My mom is freaking out and probably shouldn't be driving. And I'm going, okay, what needs done?
Yeah, I think it's the role that you have assumed for most of your life is to be like, okay, well, everybody else is sort of reacting to the situation. Let me take a step back, be a little bit more objective and respond to the situation and get what needs done. Because nobody else is going to do it. So
yeah. And then the times that I grieved most, and I'm sure there will be plenty more, but the times that I sort of grieved most and had a real emotional response are those times alone in the car. Like I cried on my drive, like on probably every drive to Decatur since.
Yeah.
And some of the drives back because I'm finally just alone and I don't have to worry about everybody around me.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like from I can't cry. I just mean I don't have to worry about anybody else's needs.
Yeah.
So it's like, those are the times that I grieved. Any other time, it's like kind of looking from the outside in.
Yep. Yeah, I know when that stuff was happening for me, it was very much the same thing. I had, Jessica and Elizabeth both asked me like, how's Noah doing? And I was like, honestly, if I had to guess, I would say he's taking care of what needs to be taken care of. And, it's kind of, that's number one priority right now. And at some point things are going to slow down. And when he has time and space, he will, he'll probably crash pretty hard and be able to process it at that time. But
yeah, it's going to be not really looking forward to this week. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm not looking forward to it because I wish I could have another week off of work.
Yeah.
But it's not really how things go. So it'll be interesting. And there's still stuff I need to help my mom with too. Like because we can't even she is, and I don't think it's irrational, but I was going to say irrationally worried about what do I do with all the financial stuff and how do I, and I'm like, Mom, he passed away on Tuesday. We'll figure that out. And you can't even do most of that stuff until you have death certificates. And so I'm going to have to help my mom figure all that out, which is none of it is super difficult, but we're 2 hours apart and she doesn't have any clue on how to do any of it. So I'm going to have to deal with all that too. Yeah. Over the course of the next probably 2 weeks, maybe to a month. So I don't know. It's going to be a little bit crazy for a while. Luckily, I have a vacation. I'm going to Curacao with Amy and her family in November. So got like a month and a half of maybe some craziness and grieving and whatever. And then hopefully I can get away for a week and unwind. So we'll see.
That'd be good for sure.
Yeah. I was definitely worried about you the day that happened. I was like, man, that's a lot. You had a lot going on at once.
Yeah. I was up at 2 that morning. Went into the airport with her and I got home around 5. Slept for a little bit, woke up in my head, pounding. Just awful.
Sure.
And I called my mom to check in. And that's when she was like, she's like, just take your time. It's okay. Like, if he passes, you don't have to be here. He's not even conscious. Like, it's, just, I want you to be safe on your drives. Just take your time. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to go get some food and some coffee and I'm going to try to make this feel better. And then once she called, I didn't even notice that. And then I finally got to the hospital and we were just sitting in the room with his body and then my head was pounding again. So I don't think it ever went away, but it wasn't noticeable during that time. So I guess that's good.
Yeah. For sure.
That was a long day for sure.
No doubt.
And then I slept in my niece's bed, which is too small and old and like sunken and didn't even sleep well that night. So it was very tired.
I was glad in a way to hear that the services were so quickly put together.
There wasn't a lot to do and he wanted to be cremated. Yeah. So we didn't have to deal with a funeral home. We dealt with the cremation center, but we didn't have to deal with funeral arrangements, so to speak. And my mom wanted to have it at the church and that was easy. And Jennifer had to come in from Florida and she asked Jennifer, because that was really the real time constraint at all was like, hey, when can you be here? And Jen's like, we could be there by, Thursday afternoon, probably, if you want to do it Friday. And they don't, they all work and kids are all in school and they just wanted to try to be able to turn it around and go back home. So we just went with Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. As a person, I don't know if you share this, but I would assume it's a shared characteristic of people who assume those positions of responsibility where for me, I've got sort of a running to-do list in my head. And until those check boxes are checked off, I'm not really letting myself actually relax. So when my dad died, we had all the hospital stuff and everything that week. And then, and it's the 2-hour drive there and 2-hour drive back. And then we had to push the funeral service to the next week. So all of a sudden it turned this thing that was 4 or 5 days of intense, decision making and all this stuff into, and it's not really going to be closed for another 7 days.
My mom said, so we had the funeral. There's a dinner at the church afterwards. We did that. We went home for a while and chatted as a family. And then all of us, it was interesting. All of us were still pretty hungry. I was starving and I ate at the lunch, but I think there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of emotion. I don't know if you even pay attention to how much you're actually eating. And all of us were really hungry. It was like 4:00. And so we're like, all right, well, let's go. We all went to El Rodeo and had like an early dinner. And we were driving back to my mom's house. And my mom she goes, it's weird. I feel kind of like a letdown now. Like it's all over. And I think what she meant is, now he's officially gone. Like we've officially said goodbye and he's officially gone. And now it's like, I think the busyness of it all kept her a little bit distracted from the now I'm alone sort of feeling.
Yeah.
And
there's a
I think
different
it's starting
normal.
to hit her that, okay, well now it's all over. So that was an interesting comment.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree with you because you said specifically it was about the Amazon login, but I was talking about how I was helping my mom try to reset logins and stuff for bills and stuff. And that was literally the day he died, but we were just sitting in the house. I mean, this was stuff she was worried about anyway. She wasn't asking me to do it at that moment, but we were just sitting in the house. It was like 7 p.m. on the day he died, and we're just sitting there. We're not even really talking a whole lot. And I was like, well, I can be doing something that needs to be done. So I just hopped on doing that. Because what else am I, like you could say you can sit and grieve, but I know how I work. That wasn't going to happen for me at that moment. So I just did stuff that needed done.
Might as well be useful. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting how everybody works, I guess.
For sure.
It's interesting to watch you go through that. I don't know what it's like to.
Yeah. Like Jake said, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come, but I found myself being very grateful, which is not surprising. It's not surprising, but that's the thing I felt most is just very grateful for my dad I don't think he knew all the best ways to love us. I mean, I just don't think that his upbringing, and I don't know a lot about his upbringing, to be honest with you, but, my mom has said things about like his mom didn't treat him very well. I don't know what that means, but I just think it was a harsh sort of like strict environment and with not a lot of comfort and love. It was just very militant or something. I don't think that he was trained well in here's all the ways that you love people, but he did the best that he could, and he did everything he could to take care of us. He did things, especially at the end, to try to take care of my mom in ways that seem weird, maybe not weird, but like he replaced their back patio and their back doors for her. And these were like, I'm going to take care of this because I know I'm not going to be around long.
Yeah.
And it's something that maybe you don't know how to deal with or shop for.
Right.
And he made sure my mom loves green. She's obsessed with like that lime green color, which is ridiculous. But he wanted to make sure like the doors they put in the back were these bright green doors, and he wanted to make sure those are the ones that he got her. And he did these sorts of things to show love. And I found myself feeling grateful for how much he loved everyone, even if he didn't show it outwardly very often.
Sure.
So, and he wasn't like a cold person or anything, but he just wasn't super loving outwardly.
Yeah.
And so I find myself, but the one thing that is interesting is like the grandkids. Like he just was a different person. Like they opened up a portal of joy and emotion and something like that.
I am kind of curious, like you mentioned that overwhelming sense of gratitude. I remember like when my dad died, it was like a switch flipped for me. And it was insane how quickly all these amazing memories came back. And they were all I could think about. They're like, it was like rose colored glasses or something. And I've later processed this as like the part of me that was defensive was like, oh, you can't hurt me anymore. And now I can see you this way.
Yeah. I don't know if there's as much of that for me, but yeah, I mean, I just have felt very grateful. And the one time that I cried at the funeral, I broke down for just a few seconds really, but when they kind of opened up the mic for people to say things and everybody kept talking about basketball, him playing basketball, and then obviously the Cubs. He loves sports. That's where I got that. But I just remember, you know, we like there were a bunch of guys that would get together and play basketball. And I remember even just as a kid going with them every Saturday to play. So what is the women's prison now? Used to be a facility called Adolph Meyer, which was for like mentally handicapped. I don't know what they did there exactly, but it was like a mentally handicapped rehabilitation. I don't think that's the right word. I'm going to get canceled.
Okay.
I don't think you can rehab.
Yeah, I think they provided adolescent psychiatric services.
Something like that.
That's what you're looking to say.
But they had this gym, this basketball court that somebody, I don't know if they knew somebody that worked there or what, but they had access to use it every Saturday to play basketball. This was before Mountford even had a gym. But I remember going there every Saturday, and I was too young to play, but me and there were other guys, like my friend Eric, his dad would play, and the court was so small and the out of bounds lines were literally right at the walls. So like there was no out of bounds space. Like if you hit the wall, you're out of bounds.
Sure.
And we would stand in this little doorway watching them play, waiting for the games to be over so we could go out and shoot around in between.
Yeah.
But like these sorts of things, like that is what built a love of playing basketball in me. And coming home every day to watch Cubs day games with my dad. This is the thing that built that love of sports in me. So like just feeling really grateful for these things. And then talking about and hearing his friends talk about it, the people he would play basketball, and I later in life played basketball with too. That got me. So I had a very brief moment when I broke down there, but these are the things that I find myself being very grateful for.
Yeah.
And then and I love my nieces and nephews, but I'm not like, they would all tell you I'm not like the fun uncle or something. I just am not that interested in kids, but, even watching him love them, I'm very grateful for that because it just, like I said, it kind of opened up this portal of joy and love that I think he had trouble accessing. But with them, it was very easy. And I'm sure with me as a kid, it was very easy too. I mean,
sure.
But as you get older, I think that closes a little bit. And it's like, well, I don't know if I should show this love to my son in this outward way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I always felt loved by my dad. I don't mean I didn't feel loved, but it was not as overflowing.
Yeah. There have been a few moments in my life. For me, it was when my dad died, and it was also becoming a father myself, that legitimately just doubled or tripled the size of my universe. Like it changed the way I saw the world in big ways. And, you grow up and you hear all these cliches, whether it's in a movie or a speech or whatever. And it's like, yeah, this person has died, but we'll keep them alive inside of us or something like that. It sounds so cliche when you hear it, but that became very real for me. When my dad died, it was like, oh wow, like he really did have such a huge part in shaping who I am, for good or for ill, whatever. I am in some way a product of this person.
Yeah.
And, I gave a eulogy at my dad's funeral, and I was talking about all the ways that he taught me the value of hard work and a love of music and art and these types of things. And I was like, wow, you know, like in so many ways, that part of him is alive in me and has guided me in certain directions. And he's still, you know, that energy, whatever that is still there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
In a real way.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. That was one thing the pastor, I think, was trying to push me to say something. And I think I would. This is the one downside of having the funeral so quick, is I didn't have time to process anything in my head. And so I didn't feel like I had a lot to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing that was like hashed out. And so it would have probably been, I was even thinking about it in the moment. Should I stand up and say something? But I think it would have been, I would have struggled to get through it. I think it would have been sort of a mess of thoughts, which is not bad necessarily. I just don't think, I don't think I had processed enough yet to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in 2 or 3 more weeks, if it was, I don't even know if the funeral was next week, if I would have had enough time, but I think in 2 or 3 more weeks, I might have like a list of things to go through in a eulogy sort of way. And I might write something or whatever, but I've thought about writing since he's passed, something sort of like what I did for Tugger.
Yeah.
But I just don't, like I said, I don't think I've processed it enough. I mean, I haven't been able to do it yet. So.
Yeah. There was some sort of responsibility or duty or something that I felt even before my dad died. I don't know that he ever said to me specifically, like, I want you to play a song at my funeral, and I want it to be Fire and Rain by James Taylor. I know for a fact that he said he wanted that song at his funeral. But that and this idea of speaking, there was never this question in my mind that was my responsibility to do it. Yeah. And so I was just like, I just volunteered for it for some reason. And it felt like something beyond me, volunteering for that. But yeah, the process of doing that, ultimately was very cathartic and helped me to process a lot of things. So, for whatever it's worth, I do suggest that. I think it's really cool. You know, I have this, document. It's like 3 or 4 pages long of the eulogy that I wrote. And it was one of these things that just kind of flowed out of me, like the day after he died or something. Mm-hmm. Just sat down and wrote and watched it pour out. And, that's something that I have now, which is like where my brain was the day after my dad died. I don't really go back and look at it, but the act of doing it was also just really helpful. So
yeah,
if you have that inclination,
I'm sure it's going to happen. I thought about it because I came home Thursday to get away and to have my own space. And I really thought on my way back Wednesday night, I really thought that I'll get up and I'll have some coffee and I'll probably write. And it just wasn't, I thought about it and I was like, I don't have anything to say at this very moment.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it yet, but I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm really grateful for too is that he got to meet Amy. He's got to meet her twice. He loved her. And this is probably where I'll break down if I break down today.
Yeah.
But where like I'm trying to think of the timeline here. She came back just recently. She left the day he died, actually. But we had gone there the Sunday prior, and we went out to lunch with a bunch of family, and then we just sat at home. We watched some of the Cubs game. We ended up watching a movie. Just sat with my parents for most of it. I caught him just looking at me and Amy a lot, like he was soaking it in. And I could tell he loved her. He was really happy for us, you know, and I think I could just see it was very much this like taking it in sort of like thing. And so he ended up having a stroke a couple days later and then went downhill very quickly. But I talked to him like 2 hours after the stroke when I called to check up, and my mom's like, well, he's he's actually doing all right. And do you want to talk to him? I was like, sure, if he wants to talk. So I talked to him for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And one of the things he said before we got off the phone was, I'm really happy for you and Amy. Like, I'm really happy, and tell her I love her. And then he said, not in a bad way. So I don't know what that means, but
I think I know what it meant.
I said, my dad loves you, not in a bad way. But that I'm really grateful that he got to meet her. And I know that I know it was really hard for him because he knew, and I think my mom said he said stuff like this to her, but like, he was really sad that if we get married, he wouldn't be able to be there and that sort of thing. But he got to meet her twice, and, he just seemed in awe of her. And maybe what she did for me, or how I was with her or something. So
Yeah,
really glad
cool.
that he got to see her, meet her. That was cool.
I love that. I seem to be crying.
What?
I seem to be crying.
Yeah, I noticed.
In a good way.
In a good way.
And I mean that. I'm not just saying that I'm crying in a good way.
I'm going to tell Amy. Jake is crying.
No, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, like, when I said
think I
that,
achieved no tears coming out, which was hard, but I did it. They were there.
yeah. The thing I said about, like, my dad dying and becoming a father, they did, like, these two things for me that felt like time travel. And it allows me to see myself in the future, is I think what my dad dying did for me. And becoming a father allowed me to see my dad in the past, like where I am now. And it sort of situated me in this place where it was almost like every time that I am experiencing a moment, I'm experiencing it for the second time. It's like it allows me to look at it from this position in the future, remembering this moment. And it's almost like I can appreciate everything that's happening now for like really what it is and what I'll feel like later. But I guess like when you were saying that about your dad, I just imagined, seeing Thatcher like genuinely happy with someone else. And in some way, like deeply empathizing with what his experience was, seeing his son like this, like at the end of his life being like, you know what? I did that. Like,
Sure.
there's something good that I'm leaving here, and he's experiencing this joy. And like, I guarantee you that was just an amazing, thing for him.
Yeah. Well, and then when, excuse me, I'm really struggling with my throat today. But when we visited the first time after his stroke, and after the stroke, when I spoke to him on the phone, he sounded fairly normal, but a little slow to speak, but pretty normal. And he deteriorated pretty quick from there. So the rest of the week, there was not a lot of speaking. And then at some point he was just not really conscious anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when he had the stroke, and we were planning to go to, it was probably the comedy show. So my mom was like, he's okay at the moment. Like, you should just stay there, do your comedy show, and then come visit. And I was like, okay, we'll do that. So we did that. So when we showed up, I guess on Friday, my dad was like, he said, just overwhelmed that we were there. And like, he just was like looking at me and looking at Amy, and he started crying. And so, yeah, like grateful for those moments as hard as they were. You're just grateful to feel that love, I guess, and feel, maybe give him that joy that you were talking about, or that, yeah, I mean, I guess joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Like at the end of my life, I want to look back and say, I did some shitty things and I did some great things. And hopefully the good outweighs the bad.
mm-hmm.
And when he looked at you, I guarantee you he saw, yeah, I did some good.
Yeah. So, pretty cool.
Yeah.
As cool as it can be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wasn't, I keep coming back to feeling grateful. I just wasn't expecting, again, not because I'm not grateful for my dad, but that wasn't the thing I expected to keep coming back up as I was dealing with all of this, but I just kept feeling grateful. And also the other thing was watching my family sort of step up, I guess, if you will. Just like everybody taking care of things that need done. And
yeah,
it was very, especially as someone who's always felt like I've got to take care of everything. It was very nice to have, just to see my family just kind of like rise to the occasion was really cool. And, the other thing was, I felt so bad that my sister had to be there alone when he passed. That was something in particular that I was terrified about.
Yeah.
Like there was a moment we were there the day before I took Amy to the airport where we thought he was going. He started breathing really weird and like the heart was doing some weird things and like, we thought he was going. My mom started breaking down and then he kind of normalized. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, I don't want to have to experience that. Like it was a real fear for me. I was okay doing it if I had to, but I didn't want it. And then later when I found out that he passed with just my sister there, I felt so bad that she had to do that alone, but also felt, I just saw her strength in that, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I apologized to her that she had to do it alone. She's like, it's okay. I'm just glad that he's not suffering anymore. And I was like, wow, you're way stronger than I am.
Yeah, it was weird. My sister kind of expressed similar things because I really took care of everything. Mm-hmm. You know, when my dad died and she was like, I'm sorry. I, wasn't there for more of it. And I was like, there's just no feeling of that from, the person who was there. But I mean, she didn't express that it was hard or anything like that, or you were just kind of worried about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, who knows what she was feeling, but yeah, I told her when I got to the hospital, I just said, I'm sorry you had to do that alone. And she's like, it's okay. I'm like, okay. Yeah. But I'm sure it wasn't easy.
Well, I'm glad for you that you had that experience though, and got to see your family stepping up like that. I know it's something that you have expressed in the past about, feeling like you always had to be that person. So
yeah,
it's cool to see those things. I kind of, I felt the opposite. I was like, I kind of disowned my dad a few years before, he died, and he was living with his siblings and his mom, and then when it came time for everything at the end, they were like, "Oh, here you go, it's all you." Like, whoa, okay, here we go.
Yeah, mostly it's my mom. The biggest thing my mom was worried about was just like, I don't know how to do all the other, like all the stuff that he took care of all the time. Mm-hmm. That was her big thing for like moving forward.
Yeah.
Obviously she was grieving my dad and stuff, but she's like, now what do I do? How do I do this alone? And I'm like, okay, so this is the thing I've got to take care of, is like figure out how to make her feel good about.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that it was rather quick deterioration, honestly. I think that that's the thing I saw as a paramedic that was most stressful on families during those times. It's just like, if it drags, I mean, I don't want to say drags, but if it goes months and you bring all this stuff into your house and try to learn how to do all these things.
We were all grateful for that too. I mean, I think my dad would feel the same way. I mean, he didn't want to go through all that.
Right.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to leave. He had told my mom multiple times he wasn't scared of dying or anything. Which I think after death, he probably is not worried about anymore. But his big thing was, I don't want to leave the grandkids. I don't want to leave, like, for them. Like, I don't want Jackson to have to, because he's used to, my parents literally babysat him every day. So I don't want Jackson to have to like deal with like losing me or Christian losing me or whatever. That was his main thing. I don't think he was worried about dying.
Right.
So, but he was in a lot of pain and discomfort for sure. And that was just terrible. And he hadn't eaten much for quite a while. He was really struggling to eat. So he wasn't living any kind of like quality life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think that if you look at hunter-gatherer societies, which we could say are sort of a picture of what we've been for the majority of our existence as humans, like death is a very, very present thing. Not just the death of family members and tribe members, but you're literally, killing to eat. Like this sort of life cycle thing is right in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think that we in Western society are pretty far removed from that. We don't have to see our cattle butchered or anything like that. And so there is a level of shock that sort of comes in. Maybe it's different for you, Frank, having been around so much death in your life, but from a different perspective. But like, it seems to be this thing that we try to hide from. We have surgeries to make ourselves look younger, to try to forget that we're aging. We do all these sorts of things, and there are very real sort of rituals that you'll see in other cultures that actually intentionally engage with death. There are tribes where, you make a pilgrimage to a pit where you've placed your decomposing relatives and things of this nature, and you watch, and it gives you a sense of who you are, as a mortal being. And it's just something that we don't get as much. So when I say like, when my dad died, I had this experience of sort of understanding myself better. I think it was really looking myself in the face and saying, wow, like this literal bloodline that I am a part of, it situated me in this moment in a different way.
Yeah.
That I don't think you have until, I don't know. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself.
I don't know. I think it's been a long time since it amazed me or surprised me. But it's probably still somewhat that, when someone dies, providing certainty to the people who love that person about what's happening is like insane amount of calm for them. I remember that not being present as a, like EMT, intermediate, before I was a paramedic, it was my scene, or I was the top, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember this chaos, and I never really had it, much at all as a paramedic myself. And I had it like, would just walk in, I'd check the patient, and I'm like, I just want you to know that, your dad is in cardiac arrest. He's dead, and we're going to do everything we can. The outcomes are not usually good for this, but I'm going to go work on him. You can watch if you want. You can stay in here if you want. We'll let you know how it goes. Mm-hmm. And this certain, like, here's what's really happening, just changes that experience so much for people.
Oh, I'm sure.
I remember that about it a lot. And so anytime someone's going through that or about to be, I try to like give that level of like, this is what's happening.
Yeah. In that immediate moment, your brain is just like, am I supposed to hold on to hope? Is it even
right? What's happening?
What's going on? What are the odds? And that's where the suffering really is. And you can't begin to process and accept that closure until you have some sort of sense of reality.
Yeah. And especially as a student, you are learning there. And I remember seeing I'm like, no one's like, this person is dead and the chances are not good for them, but those people are having a horrible time. Mm-hmm. So like and I've had many saves from cardiac arrest. So it's worth working on the person who's in a cardiac arrest, but just giving those people some, the other people here are having a serious experience too. So I don't know. That's what I remember about it. And it feels almost like evolutionary or something.
How so?
Like we are more okay with death than we talk about.
Yes.
And if you just say it, they're like, oh, okay. I don't like it, but I understand it now.
Yeah, it's an implicit knowledge. I've even heard like people who have near-death experiences, like literally where their heart stops beating or whatever, and they come back. Many of them say something similar to dying is the easiest thing we do. Yeah. Like we're afraid of it, and then when you get there, it's one of the easiest things we do. I think that I do this sort of thought experiment or exercise or whatever you want to call it, where I do imagine myself at the end of my life and think back on, am I doing the things now that person's going to be proud of? And it's not like a moralization sort of thing, but it helps me to think of life more as a game than as everything is life and death, for lack of a better term. And it's like, no, take the chances, play the game, do it in a way that you're going to be proud of later. And you look back on the Renaissance or something like that, and this concept of memento mori was very important. I think that knowing that we are finite beings allows us to create value and meaning in our lives in this ephemeral space.
Definitely, yeah.
This has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.
Somber edition.
Summer?
Somber.
Sumber.
Does that mean sleep?
Slumber?
Somber.
Somber?
Yeah.
Means sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
Might mean sleepy.
Origin. Umbra. Undershade.
Huh. Interesting.
Oppressively solemn or sober in mood. Somber.
So shaded as to be dark and gloomy.
Sumber is the person, place, or thing from which something, information, goods, etc. comes or is acquired.
That sounds very different.
Yeah, do you want to go to the Somber after this and get some supplies?
Yeah. Let's build the stash.
It could be someone else's Somber if we stash it.
Oh, that's a good point.
The becoming Somber.
The Sumber supplier made me a Sumber.
Yeah.
They Sumberfied me.
Saying Sumber?
Sumber.
Sumber.
Not Somber?
Yeah, we changed it to Sumber.
Yeah.
because that means the person, place, or thing for which something, information, goods, etc. comes or is acquired. Oh, it has synonyms.
Really? Tell me them.
Where'd they go? Nope, those aren't synonyms. I don't know why it said they were synonyms. Its second definition is spring, fountainhead, wellhead, any collection of water or on or under the surface of the ground in which a stream originates. So it's source.
It's funny, that whole Somber thing reminded me of an exercise we used to do in linguistics. It's how you could find out if a sound had meaning, is to say two words and change only that one sound. And if it changes the meaning of the word, you know that the sound has meaning in the language. It's called minimal pairs.
Some versus some?
That's an example. Yeah, like...
So some had meaning and some has meaning?
And the two sounds. Like you keep everything else in the environment the same, and you just change that sound, and it changes the meaning of the word.
So like somber and samber?
Yeah. So and are meaningful in the language. The same as like pin and pen. We know the difference between and Those two sounds have meaning in the language.
All right. I like it. Do you want to close this out in prayer?
Yeah. I really liked this conversation. It's interesting how something that doesn't get talked about very often is so normal in life. But there are moments where you kind of gain perspective, and they're good. They slow you down, make you look at things differently.
Definitely. Death is...
Did he pray?
He hasn't prayed yet. I think he's trying to have like a formal type of closing.
That was more of a benediction.
That's why I put a tie on. I wanted this to be
Benedict
more
Arnold.
formal. I'm not going to pray.
Why?
You can pray if you'd like.
No.
This podcast is sponsored by funerals.
I think Steve Jobs said that remembering that you're about to die is something akin to good.
He said it like that. Remembering you're about to die is something akin to good.
I'm going to look it up because it's not that.
Well, like I said, you've got like this idea of memento mori. You've got, the legend of Alexander the Great had somebody behind him and whispering into his ear, "You are only a man."
Yeah.
I really like that we've tried to close this out at least a couple times.
I think this is a good quote, so
That's
we
how
can
we do
really
it.
use it.
All right.
Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart.
Yeah, shorten that to something akin to good.
Exactly. I tried, and it didn't go.
All right, guys. It's been real. Catch you later.
Later.
Noah is Seacrest out.
Hey, it's Frank again. Thanks for listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. You can also check us out online at theunbecomingplatypus.com. We hope these conversations inspire you to improve your communication skills and deepen your connections with your own friends and loved ones. Until next time, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.